and why mother-in-law calls herself mommy to my daughter. My daughter is just over 3 months old. Occasionally, my Mil watches her when I have things to do or need a break. Lately, she has been calling herself mommy when talking to my daughter. She does it in front of me and my husband at least once and sometimes more every time she visits now. And she always brushes it off like, whoopsie doodles, I'm so used to being mommy, so I called myself that, haha. But today she gave me reason to doubt that. I called her over to come watch the baby while I took care of a house project that concerned chemicals. I took a shower afterward because chemicals. I went downstairs to grab some fresh clothing out of the dryer when I heard my Mil talking to my baby in the other room, and she called herself mommy 4 times in a 3-minute conversation. Do you want mommy to play with you? Are you having fun with mommy? Are you being a good girl for mommy? And mommy loves you. Yes, I do. She didn't know I was there, and she didn't even try to correct herself. I asked my husband to help me navigate this situation because it's super weird and frankly I think unhealthy for my Mil to be playing out this fantasy delusion. He said to me, if it really bothers you that much, we can say something next time we hear her do it. Which makes me wonder if I'm making a bigger deal out of this than it should be, but it feels like a big effing deal. Relevant comments, in a bottle. No, you're not overacting. I would not let mother-in-law babysit anymore. Your mother-in-law probably wants a do-over child. You also have a husband problem, albeit a mild one. He needs to talk to his mother and tell her to stop calling herself mommy to your child. Oop, I thought the same thing about the do-over baby. My Mil lost her own daughter at 4 weeks old due to SIDS almost 40 years ago. Neither she nor my husband seem to want to unpack that trauma, but I think this might be the start of a super scary path and I'm worried that my husband is turning a blind eye because he doesn't want to deal with it. Calica Sparks, I would have shut that down immediately upon the first slip. I intentionally asked my mother and the Mil which grandma name they wanted to be called for clarity before they ever met Arlo. OP. We actually did all these things. During my pregnancy, my Mil decided that she wanted to be called Lola by the baby. I asked her to pick a different name because it felt too similar to Mama for me to be comfortable with it, especially because L sounds are really difficult for babies to say honestly. I could smell this shit coming from a mile away. My husband said I was being ridiculous, but he stood by what I wanted and urged her to pick a different name. Ultimately, she chose Grammy. The first time I heard her call herself mommy to my daughter, I said something along the lines of, excuse me, who are you again? And Mil laughed it off with a whoopsie doodle and I drove the point home with another comment along the lines of, you sure as hell ain't mommy. I caught some side-eye for that one. I was definitely being snarky. Anyway, we've tried all these things, and it's possibly why my husband is just starting to ignore it. I think he might be burnt out on the subject and over it. But I feel like if I let up on this, it will progressively get worse because that's the only way it's gone so far, with Mil continuing to push the edge of the envelope with what she can get away with. OP on the concerns regarding her Mil and shared few more details on the background of losing her daughter at 4 weeks old. OP, you've hit on a lot of points here that I'm worried about too. She was a teenager when she had her daughter, and that baby died at 4 weeks old from SIDS. 10 years later, she had my husband. In the years between, instead of grieving and going to counseling, she essentially drug binged for a decade. I do worrying that she has a festering mental illness triggered by the birth of my daughter, like she's trying to use my daughter as a replacement for the daughter that she lost 40 years ago. Anyway though, whenever I bring that up, I feel crazy and my husband thinks she wouldn't do that. But then an issue like this crops up and I can't help but feel validated in my suspicion. OP on if her Mil is married and why her husband's father is not involved. She is not married. She has been a single mother to my husband his whole life. Thick dude, what does your husband call her? He calls her by her first name and has since he was 11. He told me that she ignored him more when he called her mom or any variation, and she was much more responsive when he addressed her by her first name. She has even corroborated this in the past, that he had so many questions as a kid that she learned to tune out the word mom by default. Kind of makes her cry less believable, right? Update, July 6, 2024. We maybe got a resolution to the problem in a roundabout way. Mil hasn't spoken to us since this morning though, so we will have to see how this just winds up settling. Sorry this update has wound up really long. We had my Mil over for 4th of July. We made plans a while ago for me to cook dinner for the holiday. I spoke with my husband the day before and let him know that I wasn't pleased with Mil stomping all over the parenting boundaries, including, but not limited to, the mommy problem. I brought up many points that you all gave me, so thank you everyone who commented. I had let him know that I was planning to say something while she was with us, and I was on high alert for most of the day. There's some necessary backstory before I get into what went down. We have a rule for our Mil concerning our daughter. Mil is not allowed to take pictures of the baby on her phone. We also don't send pictures of the baby to her phone through texts or email. My Mil is one of those people who posts every tiny detail of her life to her friends on Facebook, and she has a nasty habit of posting unflattering photos of me, and she and her friends criticize the way I look. She also uses big moments in my life to get attention from her friends and family. She's really addicted to the adoration. My husband and I decided early on that we did not want our daughter included in what happens on her wall with her friends, from a consent standpoint, but also to help set up our daughter to be far away from social media for mental health reasons. I know that's a problem that's far off in the future, but we feel it's important to protect her even now. MIL literally cannot stop herself from immediately sharing a photo she takes with her FB friends, so we just decided no photos on her phone, period. We even bought a really high-end camera for ourselves that we allow her to use, which prevents her from sharing, but still allows her to take pictures. For the record, we have provided her a photo album with physical copies of baby pictures, and we add to it all the time. Anyway, yesterday Mil decided to break the rule. The camera was within reach for her to use, and she deliberately chose the phone instead. She thought she was being sneaky and tried to look like she was texting, but started snapping pictures of our daughter. I happened to be looking over her shoulder and I caught her red-handed. I asked her to stop taking pictures and delete the ones she had already taken. She told me that the pictures were just for her to have on her phone, but I saw her start clicking on the share buttons and she scrolled over to her FB icon. She suddenly realized that I was still looking at her phone while she was doing it, so she backed out of everything and locked her phone screen. I called her out and said, "You were literally about to share the picture. I watched you almost do it," and she went off. She started yelling that she sees my husband take pictures of the baby all the time on his phone, that it's not fair that she can't take pictures on her phone, and that we were being hypocrites. My husband at that point stepped in and qualified that he, as the baby's father, has different rules where he can take pictures on his phone. She started whining and called herself an equal partner who can take pictures of the baby if she wants to, and again called us hypocrites. I told her, very specifically, that she is in fact not an equal partner and needs to abide by our rules. She pushed further and said that she should be an equal partner, thinks she is helping to raise the baby, and that we need to see that she should be able to do what she wants. That's where I had it. I said, "Mil, you are not baby's mother, you are not her parent, and you are not an equal partner. You are her grandmother, and that means you will follow our rules because we are her parents and what we say goes." She started laughing at me, very derisive kind of laughing, but I just picked up my daughter, said, "You're laughing like it's a joke, but it's not," and walked out of the room. The night ended pretty poorly. This morning, Mil called us to invite us out to brunch. My husband thought that maybe she wanted to extend an olive branch and make amends, so we took her up on the offer. Brunch went well enough. We were all seemingly getting along. But then as we were finishing up, Mil brought up that she took some great photos the night before and couldn't wait to share them with her friends. My husband didn't miss a beat. He said Mil's name. Why are you still trying to buck against my rules? Once again, she called us hypocrites, said that she's offended that we don't trust her, and doesn't feel like she deserves to be punished when all she wants to do is have pictures of our baby. My husband pointed out that we can't trust her because she keeps trying to subvert our rules and continues to undermine us as parents. And if she can't fall in line, then we are going to have a serious problem going forward. She stood up from the table, announced that we will have to accept that we disagree on this, and she refuses to talk about it any further. And she stormed out of the restaurant. That's everything up until now. We haven't heard from her since she stormed out. Normally, she calls my husband about 3 times a day, so we're pretty sure that she's really mad. My husband and I discussed how we are going to go forward from this, and we are resolute that if she cannot figure out how to stay out of parenting our baby, then she simply won't see the baby at all. I so appreciate how he has decided to put his foot down and help me put Mil in her place, because you all were right. She has really gotten out of control and seems to legitimately think that she is a third parent to my daughter. I also appreciate everyone who had something to say on my last post. You all gave me a lot of tools to show my husband that what is happening here is not acceptable, and that if we take a back seat, she is going to happily push us out of our roles entirely. That's all for now. I'll update again if there ends up being anything new to share. Relevant comments, Doglavrinva. Stop giving her printed pictures too. She can scan them or just take photos of them and share from that. Oop, honestly, I agree, and we might stop given the circumstances. But initially, the idea was that we weren't trying to prevent her from having pictures. We were just trying to make it harder for her to post stuff and hopefully discourage her. We will probably reevaluate, and meanwhile, nobody can say we didn't try to compromise. Hirake Nora, tell her if she is with your baby, she has to relinquish her phone. Put it somewhere safe until she leaves. She can participate in family gatherings, but the phone stays locked away until she goes home. Oop, my husband was thinking of phone jammer, but I'm not sure if that prevents camera use. I think this idea is better. In the meantime, though, we are planning to not see her for a while, and I hope a really long while. We have even jokingly talked about moving across the country again, which sounds ridiculous, but we've done it before with less. OP on the reason why her husband calls his mother by her first name, not mom, OP. Yeah, there is. The story, as I have heard it from both Mil and husband, is that husband asked so many questions as a little kid that Mil became numb to the word mom. She began ignoring him when he called her that. So at the ripe old age of 11, my husband started calling her by name. Evidently, she is much more responsive to being addressed by name than she ever was when called mom, so it stuck. OP on her Mil's thoughts of her nickname from her granddaughter. Oop, she settled on Grammy to my face, but then just cut out the middleman and went straight to calling herself mommy to my daughter when I wasn't around, and honestly, when I was around too. Concerning the Lala thing, I was always worried that behind my back she would call herself mama to the baby and then use the Lala thing as almost a smokescreen because the two are so close. I thought that she would probably encourage mispronunciation as soon as possible, and it would eventually get to the point of, well, that's what the baby is calling me, so I guess I'm mama now. At the time, my husband thought I was being ridiculous, but even now, I don't think I was. I asked that she pick a different name that couldn't accidentally turn into mama, so I would know for sure if she had been training my kid to call her that and couldn't blame it on the baby mixing up words, sounds.